What is up with the University of Memphis? Why do power conferences not seem to want to add them? How much value do they have? Why are they the belle of the ball in the G5? I want to break down for you exactly the answers to all these questions. This is the Let's Run podcast. Folks, thank you so much for checking out the channel. I really do appreciate it. We had a good video yesterday about the kind of spicy court documents going on between the Mountain West and the Pac-12. Our first episode back was the Conference Realignment Series episode on Oregon State University. Please do go and check that one out. And today we're having a really fun opportunity to talk about the University of Memphis. The Conference Realignment Series is a great chance to go school by school in the G5 kind of realm, break down schools' realistic value, talk about the benefits, the positives, the negatives, the detriments. You're not going to want to miss it. Soon, maybe it's by tomorrow, I'm not exactly sure when, but I will put these all in a playlist so that you can watch them in order, and so that we can just cover these schools fairly. So today is maybe the most requested of all of the conference realignment schools. It is the first American school that we are doing. We've done a lot of Pac-12 Mountain West schools, and now we're jumping over to the University of Memphis, which, because of their big offer to the Big 12, have been all the rage in the news. People have been talking about Memphis like crazy, and for good reason. Memphis is one of the more interesting, at least story-wise, universities in all of college sports, and a really good university run by pretty smart people in a cool city. It's not a perfect city, but it's a really cool city with a fan base that really does seem to care about the product, and because of all the Pac-12 Mountain West stuff and Memphis always being the school that people are all talking about, Memphis has kind of been a focus of discussion for months now. And so, in this episode, I want to break down kind of who Memphis is, what they're all about, university, facilities, and how much value they have, and maybe answer to you why the power conferences don't seem to want to add that school, no matter how hard Memphis tries. So let's pull up the old slideshow here and let's share. I'm going to try and keep these videos to relatively short lengths. I want them to be pretty digestible for you. If there's anything you think about the content or the format, please let me know. I want to try and make these as digestible as possible. So why not Memphis? Let's talk about Memphis. They were in the 2021 AAC championship game. Of course, in 2019, they won the Cotton Bowl, kind of a dream season, the final season before Mike Norvell, the current head coach at Florida State, left the University of Memphis. They recently did a huge renovation of their stadium. Their stadium's called Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium, kind of the Liberty Bowl. Really cool stadium design. I'll get into that just a bit later. They have a really strong financial package kind of institution for NIL set up, a really good structure, really good infrastructure. They have a new indoor practice facility under construction. And of course, they have star power in their basketball. Famously, Coach Calipari in the 2000s led that team, famously with Derrick Rose to a national championship game. I think they went to 2 Final Fours, actually. They were among the best programs in all of college basketball there from 2000. I can't remember exactly what years Coach Calipari was there, but I think it was like 2005, maybe 2004, 2000 to 2010, until current coach Josh Pastner, current UNLV head coach, took over there for Coach Cal. Really strong basketball brand, a fun, star power too. Last year, I got to see them up close in person. PJ Haggerty was there. We got to see them at the Thomas and Mack. Really just a fun basketball university. So the Liberty Bowl, I mentioned this $200 million renovation to the Liberty Bowl. There had been some complaints about, the Liberty Bowl's, just how nice of a facility it was. People didn't, denigrate its value as a stadium. But the university, clearly based on feedback that it got from the Big 12 and from power conferences, underwent a huge renovation of the Liberty Bowl. You can see the rendering here. It's not a perfect shape, but it's kind of like a horseshoe kind of oval shape in terms of the concourse and the seating. I believe they took away a few seats, but they really modernized the stadium. And I think it'll be ready for the 2026 season. Really, I think what they've done with the Liberty Bowl has really catapulted Memphis in terms of amenities and in terms of stadium, especially with a school like USF pouring so much money into their programs. Memphis has done a good job of keeping up with the times in college football. And this renovation, this huge, I mean, $200 million, you can almost buy. You're a good way into buying your own new stadium entirely. So to invest this much into the Liberty Bowl, I think shows a great sign of commitment for the University of Memphis to their football program. So let's talk about the recent history with Memphis. I could have gone back further to this. The Big 12, several times over the past 15 years, the Big 12, even the ACC, have really deeply looked at the University of Memphis as a possible expansion target. Famously, in the 2021-2022 season, the Big 12 expanded, adding BYU, Cincinnati, UCF, and Houston, and did not choose Memphis. Why did the Big 12 not choose Memphis? Well, there's a lot of reasons for that, but the Big 12 administrators and Big 12 leadership seem like, Memphis was not apparently um, really the top option or really even the secondary option for the Big 12. The Big 12 has seemed to want to add schools like, Gonzaga with basketball and UConn and, obviously these four brands, BYU, Cincinnati, UCF, and Houston, and has passed over Memphis not once, but multiple times. 2023, the Pac-12 implodes and the Big 12 again expanded and Memphis, no invite. The Big 12 went all the way up to 16 schools. In 2024, the ACC expanded for the 2024 season with Cal, Stanford, SMU. Again, Memphis, the ACC is at 17 teams. Why would the ACC not have added Memphis to get them to 18 teams? And really, there's a perception of the University of Memphis and the city of Memphis that it's kind of not power enough, despite checking so many of the boxes that you'd want for a power school. Conferences just do not seem to see the value in adding Memphis right away, because Memphis, in their eyes, is always going to be there. Um, Genuinely, conferences are guided by TV, and while Memphis is solid, is really good, conferences haven't seen Memphis as additive to their TV deals. They've seen Memphis as a good school that's another mouth to feed instead of a, a necessary addition. And there are plenty of schools, say Wake Forest in the ACC, or a couple of schools in the ACC, several, Boston College, and in the Big 12, I think the Big 12 top to bottom is pretty solid. I can't think of any school that I would rather have Memphis over. I would rather have Houston because I think Houston's a better city to be in. Houston is the biggest university in that city. Houston clearly has the money to compete. And I like Houston as a city and as a base of operation more for a conference than Memphis. Cincinnati has better football success than Memphis, especially leading up to that 2019, 2021. Cincinnati made a national championship game. Um, and though Cincinnati is struggling right now, it's a pretty big market. Cincinnati, Ohio, it's the biggest school in that market. Um, I can see why the Big 12 valued Cincinnati over Memphis. UCF, UCF was coming off of a string of just excellent seasons, including that 2017, I believe, season where they claimed to have won a national championship, much to the hilarity of all the rest of college sports world that laughed at them for hanging a national championship banner. But UCF, Central Florida, that's a good place to be. Florida's a good, the Big 12 didn't have great Florida roots, and with UCF, there's money there, and there is fan support there, and there was success more so than the University of Memphis. And it's not like Memphis was just coming off of, even in basketball, the Coach Calipari days. They were coming off of, in the 2000s, the Tubby Smith and the Josh Pastner days. So it's not like the Memphis, glorious football or basketball tradition was alive and well when the Big 12 was expanding. Um, and then, when the ACC chose Cal and Stanford and SMU was in Dallas. And I genuinely do believe that the ACC wanted a better foothold in Texas, wanted a travel a travel facilitator between Cal and Stanford. And ultimately, Memphis is a city that's, um, there's stigmas about it. People don't think it's particularly safe. It's one of the more, it's a violent city. And certainly there's a race element to that. Although I don't think that people aren't inviting Memphis because they don't, because they're racist. There just is a stigma about Memphis as a city. And despite the really nice parts and the great people that live there and the passion that people have for it, they just don't see it as a necessary addition, and a place where you need to have a stronghold. If the NBA started over again and 30 new teams were chosen, I don't think Memphis would be one of the cities that was chosen. On the flip side, if all of the power conferences were disbanded and, a 1 to 60, would Memphis be one of those 60 schools chosen? Yeah, they probably would be. There would be schools in the Big Ten and even the SEC, schools like Vanderbilt or, Northwestern or Purdue that would be left out and Memphis would be brought in. But that's just not the world that we live in. And so, Memphis has been consistently left behind in conference realignment. And you got to feel for the fans and all the people really dying to invest in that program and in that city that just the power conferences have said time and time again that they don't want, that they don't need. But you have to really credit Memphis. Memphis, the university hasn't quit. They've been proactive under their president. There's ongoing, the Big 12 discussions have not stopped. Memphis has a top 50 market size, designated market area. They've got a basketball tradition. They've got football upgrades. They're making the NCAA tournament in basketball. And, I guess, I want to give credit to Memphis as a university because I do think this will, there's a good chance that this will eventually pay off for them. And if it doesn't, then they're going to have to be proactive and creative in how they move forward, you know, starting in the early 2030s. But there's going to be several universities like that want to be power, that have the appetite to try and join a power conference, but the power conferences just don't want. Memphis could be in a position where, despite their best efforts, they're left out, and they're going to have to be forward thinking. But I think that they've shown that flexibility and that desire to keep moving forward. And so I just want to credit the fan base, the administration. Memphis is doing exactly what it should be doing. They're not doing anything wrong, and they need to be credited for the effort that they're putting into this because I have hope that it eventually will pay off, though I can't guarantee that, and nobody can. They're not going to leave the American for another Group of Five conference. They're not going to leave for the Pac-12, and that's really the only other Group of Five conference that would even have a prayer of landing Memphis. I mean, heck, as a Mountain West school, I would. I'm sure that we would welcome Memphis with open arms in the Mountain West. That's obviously not going to happen, but Memphis isn't going to leave the American unless it's for a power league. At least listen, in 2031, 2032, I don't think it's worth like arguing about 10 years in the future in college sports because really that next line of TV deals kind of being renegotiated in the early 2030s and the expected kind of crumbling of the Power Four, maybe reshaping itself into a different process. I don't see any world where Memphis leaves the American. In fact, if I was a betting man and I had a group of Pac-12 fans that said, I bet you Memphis will join in any form, football only, and and in this or that. Maybe they'll basketball go to the Big East, in any form. I would be willing to bet $100 to win one that Memphis will remain in the American, and will not join another Group of Five conference before the year 2031 or 2032. It's not going to happen. Memphis got $11 million dollars in its distribution from the AAC in 2024. SMU, when they left the AAC, and Houston and Cincinnati and UCF, these schools are making balloon payments over long periods of time to the American Conference. And Memphis getting $11 million, dollars, Memphis is not going to leave the AAC, which is a good football conference. Navy, Army, Tulane, Memphis. There are several schools in the American that have shown the ability to try and compete, specifically Army a little bit last year, and then Memphis and Tulane, obviously, and USF. with their level of commitment as of late. Um, Memphis is not going to leave the American to be paid less in the Pac 12. The Pac 12 will not be distributing $11 million dollars to its schools. Now, look, that's speculation, but I feel pretty confident in that. And people that are serious about talking and analyzing what the Pac 12 will get in terms of media payouts and distributions, and the American is an established conference, with steady revenue and years of built up NCAA tournament distributions and bowl distributions. They're not going to leave that to join a conference where they won't have. You can make an argument that Memphis's chances of making the New Year's Six, I guess that's kind of an antiquated. That's the antiquated term. The college football playoff. Memphis has just as good of a chance of making it in the American as they would in the Pac-12. If they go 11-1 or 12-0 in the American, they've got a really good chance of getting in. And it might be easier for them to go 11-1 or 12-0 in the American than it would be in the Pac-12. Therefore, you know, a conference is value. When a school looks, sorry, Rosie, when a school looks at how valuable being a part of a conference is to that individual school, they look at two things. One, for football, and this is football specific, because although I know Memphis basketball, which we will talk about in just a sec, is incredibly valuable, football is still the main driver of this discussion. A school will look at two things. One, it'll look how good is the conference at putting me in a position to go 11-1 or 12-0. The Mountain West, for example, last season, very good for Boise State, allowing them to go 11-1 or putting them in the best possible position, not allowing them. Boise State obviously earned that record. But how good is a conference at providing an opportunity to go 11-1 or 12-0 for a school? That's the primary. Do you want to be in a deep conference? Do you think the Big 12 loves being deep and having 12 teams that could possibly win the conference? How much of a benefit for that conference is that setup? You think the Big 10 probably likes having a bunch of weak teams at the bottom and then strong teams at the top because it provides its top schools the best opportunity to have the best records possible. And that's why a school that had a sucky record like Indiana ended up in the college football playoff. So that's the first thing. How good is a conference at allowing you to go 11-1 or 12-0? It's not the only thing because, Conference USA, for example, is very good for Liberty for going 11-1 and 12-0, but it lacks this second factor. How much money can the conference pay you? And Memphis at $11 million, without a $15 to $30 million exit fee to join the Pac-12, is making probably more money than it would in the Pac-12 and doesn't have to deal with exit fees and poaching fees and controls the conference and is the top dog in their conference. Now, it's not like the American is some marvelous geographical league, but it does provide a decent, a reasonable, and a realistic footprint for Memphis to reside in. And it pays them the most money. So Memphis is not joining the Pac-12. It is not leaving the American for a conference that is not a power conference because it is not valuable to Memphis to do so. There is no value. Let's talk about their facilities real quick before we get into basketball. They play in, obviously, Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium. Pretty big. I think it's 50,000 or so, 45, 50, 60,000. I mean, very solid football arena. Obviously, they have the Penny Hardaway Center for Excellence, which is their basketball training facility. Penny Hardaway has done a marvelous job of helping Memphis basketball have the monetary funds and the investment to move it forward, even if he hasn't always done a great job of being a coach and actually winning the games that he needs to win. And they play in the FedEx Forum, which is very close to Memphis's campus. It's an NBA facility. It's a fantastic place to play basketball, and they do a really good job there. So let's talk about Memphis basketball because this is a point that I consistently see. Memphis basketball needs to be saved. Memphis basketball is languishing away in the American, and it needs to be saved. It's just struggling so much, and Memphis basketball fans, and I'm not saying I blame them because there is a lot of frustration and justified frustration for being in the American Conference, but Memphis basketball doesn't need to be saved. It needs to save itself. Let's take a good hard look at Memphis basketball over the last few seasons. This season, they were a what were they, a 7 seed or an 8 seed in the NCAA tournament. They lost to Colorado State in the first round. A lot of good wins, including a nice road win over UNLV early on in the season. They beat Connecticut, they beat Michigan State, lost to Auburn. Really a great non-conference schedule that they performed excellently in. Then they only lose 2 games in the AAC. They were underseeded last year. They probably should have been a better seed. A tough road loss at Temple and a tough loss at Wichita State should not have prevented them from being, a higher seed. But they also lost to Arkansas State at home. That's gonna cost you. I mean, it's not just the American schedule that kept them from getting a high seed in the NCAA tournament. It's also losing to Arkansas State at home. Um, and they still had a team that they could have beaten in Colorado State in the NCAA tournament. They were a 5 seed. I mean, that's not a terrible seed to be in the NCAA tournament. So Memphis basketball loses in the first round. Then we look at 2024. They didn't make the NCAA tournaments. I'm sorry if you're losing to South Florida at home, if you're losing to Rice at home, if you're losing to North Texas, SMU, Florida Atlantic. That's your fault. It's not it's not some outside force that you don't control's fault that your basketball isn't where you want it to be. There is one person whose fault it is that Memphis basketball isn't where it needs to be, and his name is Penny Hardaway. Um, and so there you go. Then we look at, and they didn't make the NCAA tournament last year, and they didn't deserve to make the NCAA tournament last year. 2023, they lose in the first round to FAU. They were an 8 seed, I believe, and they were playing Florida Atlantic, who was really good that season. They lost by one. You know, good, relatively good conference schedule, non-conference schedule. They had a good year, but they lost in the tournament, and that's just the way it is. It's not like they lost in the second round to the number 1 seed. They lost to teams that they could beat. 2022, they did win a game in the NCAA tournament, but it was in the first four against Boise State. So yes, it was an NCAA tournament win, but no, it was not in the first round. It was in the first four. Um, and that's Penny Hardaway's only win as the basketball coach at the University of Memphis. They were a 1 seed. They won the NIT in 2021. No teams played in 2020 because of COVID. And then they were in the NIT in 2019. And what I'm getting at here is Memphis basketball is in a group of five conference. It's not a great group of five conference, but it's in a group of five conference. And it has made the NCAA tournament, had opportunities to win games in the NCAA tournament, and yet continually has lost dumb conference games, and they've lost them. It's not anybody's fault but Memphis basketball that they lost these stupid conference games. And yes, I understand that it is tough to be in a bad basketball conference, but I'm sorry. Football plays the bills. The American has not and is not a bad football conference. And look at schools like Gonzaga. Look at Wichita State before, they joined the American back when Greg Marshall was there. Heck, look at UNLV. There are tons of examples of mid-major schools that have won games in the NCAA tournament that have done more with less than Memphis basketball has, that have been able to succeed and maintain a fan base. It is Memphis basketball's own fault that it is not where it needs to be. Win your stinking games, guys. Win games in the NCAA tournament. You have the resources, you have the coach, you have the practice facilities, you have the recruiting. Memphis basketball does not need to be saved. It needs to step up and save itself. Win some stinking games. This is coming from a frustrated UNLV fan that has seen a program do less with more for decades. And Memphis basketball is an example of a school that also is doing less with more. And I know this is harsh, but that's because I have high expectations for what Memphis basketball should be. And I don't enjoy when conferences and schools blame outside forces when they are in control of their own destiny. And I know it's hard. Guess what? College sports is hard. Nobody cares. Football is the main moneymaker anyway. You have to win games if you want to be where you want to be. That's my Memphis basketball rant. Again, I really like Memphis basketball. We are at UNLV. We are playing in Memphis next season. I'd love to go to that game. Don't think I'm going to be able to get to it. I'd love to fly out to Memphis to watch that. But I only say these things because I believe that Memphis basketball should be a national brand, and it isn't right now, even though it has brand power. It is not where it should be. And it's Memphis basketball as an institution. It's their own fault. It's not anybody else's fault. So Ryan Silverfield is the current head coach of Memphis. And, by all accounts, seems like a really solid dude. Seems like he's doing a reasonable job maintaining the stuff that Mike Norvell built. And Memphis had a 10-win season last year, has won against Big 12 teams in their bowl games the last two seasons. Um, there has been a little bit of criticism that Silverfield cannot take Memphis to that ultimate high level that Memphis wants to be at. But that 2023 season really impressive. The 2024 season really impressive. I think that Memphis football, especially with this new stadium, is healthy. And so I have no, bad, huge comments to say. I hope Silverfield can kind of take Memphis over the hill this season. They've got a huge transfer class coming in. Let's look at Memphis football and go for their record, what they're going to do in 2025. Memphis should beat Chattanooga. It should beat Georgia State and Troy. I do think Memphis will drop a game to Arkansas at home. Arkansas, I think, is going to be pretty good next season. Sam Pittman and Taylor Green and those guys, I think, are going to be good. I do think they'll probably drop, one of these three road games, Georgia State, Troy, Florida Atlantic. I think Memphis will lose one of them. I don't know which one. Football's tough. Memphis has a huge roster upheaval coming into this new season. So, in this first 5-game stretch where they have 3 road games and the 2 home games, I see Memphis coming out of that stretch 3-2. Then I see them, going on a little bit of a run here. I think they'll beat Tulsa 4-2. I think they'll win at UAB 5-2. I think that they will beat South Florida 6-2. They will win. They will win at Rice 7-2. They will beat Tulane 8-2. They will lose to East Carolina 8-3. I think East Carolina is going to be pretty good. That's a tough road game. I think they're going to beat BYU, for example, this year. And then, so that would put them at 8-3. And then I believe they will beat Navy and end the season 9-4. I think that should be enough to put them in the AAC championship game against whoever is the second best team or the best team in the AAC. And I think Memphis has a really good chance of winning the AAC next season. But I guess we'll see. So, what's my conclusion here? Memphis may very well be in, much like I talked about with Oregon State, they may very well be in the 2030, 2031 range in whatever the fourth best power conference is. I do not think we are going to move to a three power conference kind of scenario. Like, I think there is going to be 4 power conferences, and Memphis will be very well positioned to join whatever that fourth best power conference is, the weakest of the 4 power conferences. I think that will probably be the ACC. And Memphis, there's going to be a few schools that'll leave the ACC that will probably open up and make really a need for a school like Memphis to jump in. It does suck that Memphis is probably stuck in the American for the next, 4 years or so, 5 years or so. However, I would just say that Memphis in 2019 won the Cotton Bowl. They have shown, even in their past years with their basketball program, that you can win. You can make runs in the NCAA tournament. There are a lot of schools like Gonzaga that have shown, schools like San Diego State that have shown that in mid-major conferences. And yes, I do understand that the American is very weak with basketball, but at the end of the day, 1 terrible loss is not going to kill you. 2 terrible losses probably won't kill you. What will kill you is underperforming in the NCAA tournament year after year, and that is what Memphis has done. Memphis football is healthy. I think that Memphis deserves a spot in the power leagues in the early 2030s, and I have confidence that is a possibility that really should happen. There's a scenario where the power conferences in the early 2030s say, we're closed for business. We don't want any more schools. In which case, Memphis, alongside the other top group of 5 schools, need to join and create a super league. They need to separate from the American, the Conference USA, the Sun Belt, the Mountain West. All these conferences need to kind of dissolve and form a super league. And I think that's probably the best route forward if the power conferences are truly closed for business. But none of these power conference schools want to share money with you. They don't want to share money with UNLV. They don't want to share money with San Diego State. They proved that they don't want to share money with Oregon State and Washington State. Nobody wants to share money with you. And ultimately, I think that a lot of schools like Memphis and, like some of the schools in the Pac-12 in the Mountain West and the American, whatever, other schools in the American, I think they're going to be in rough spots because I envision a world where power conferences are simply just going to refuse to share money with any more group of five schools. There was a line, Oregon State and Washington State were below that line. Memphis has been below that line. So even schools like San Diego State are below that line clearly right now. Boise State below that line. And the best thing you can do is control what you can control and go out there and win games on the football field and win games on the hardwood. That's all you can do. That's all you can do. It's not complaining about having your program need to be saved. It's going out there and winning games. And the great thing about Memphis is Memphis as a university has shown that it is capable of doing so on the hardwood and on the field. I believe in Memphis. It is a great school with all the potential in the world. And I think that Memphis, the best thing that they can do over this next 5 year period, and nothing is stopping them, is going out and winning some dang games. So, guys, thank you so much for checking out the video. Please do like the video. Please do subscribe, share the video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If specifically you're a Memphis fan, I would love to hear your opinions, what you think I got right. Maybe if you think I'm being too harsh, let me know. I'd love to know. And, send me an email, send me a message, leave a comment. I want to know what your thoughts are. Thank you so much for checking out the channel. Subscribe and let's run.